doing, guys? It's JH the boxing fan, back with another video reaction to last night's boxing action at the OVO Arena in Wembley, where of course Josh Buatsi was successful in the all British showdown at light heavyweight, winning the British and Commonwealth titles, defeating Dan Aziz, his former sparring partner and good pal. I'll be coming on to that in just a few seconds. I thought I'd just very quickly touch on the undercard on that boxer show last night. Impressive stoppage performance from the surgeon, Ben Whitaker. He's promising, he talks about how good he is, and we're starting to see that. We're really starting to see that. He's starting to look really exciting, isn't he, Ben Whitaker, at that light heavyweight division. Sure, he'll be looking to step up before long. Caroline Dubois was out in action against a tough opponent in Reyes, the American. Obviously took her to 10 rounds. Don't think it was necessarily Caroline Dubois at her best, but nonetheless, she's still learning, obviously still getting the browns under her belt, and defended, of course, her IBO lightweight title in good fashion. Disappointing for Adam Azim against Enoch Paulson for the EBU European Championship at super lightweight. That fight didn't really get going, did it, before the fifth round. I was looking forward to seeing how Azim was going to fare there down that sort of back end, and unfortunately in the fifth round, Paulson, a former EBU title holder himself, was to pull out through that shoulder injury. And I think then the acrobatics at the end from Adam Azim was probably the highlight of that fight on the co-main. It was really all about the main event last night, wasn't it, guys? It was a good fight. I enjoyed it. Was it the epic contest we were all hoping for? Probably not. Probably not. I don't think it ever really caught a light like I was hoping for. But it was a good fight. I thought, generally speaking, Buatsi really controlled the rhythm of the fight, the pace of the fight from throughout most of it, didn't he? He was controlling the distance just fractionally. He's that good, Buatsi, that he just knows how to adjust, make those adjustments so that when he fires, he always seems to be in range. Whereas with Aziz, you feel like he was sort of less sure, trying to get himself into range, and that was sort of half the battle before he could get his shots off. I thought Aziz had a really good fifth, I think it was, at the end of the fifth round. We started to think, okay, this is more like it from Aziz. Then he just seemed to sort of gas a little bit, didn't he? I did a couple of rounds where he wasn't so effective before. Another good round, I think it was around the ninth, that I thought Aziz seemed to be able to have some more success. But he couldn't then sort of sustain that going into the very sort of final stages of the fight. The last few rounds were with Buatsi, who I think really, as I say, controlled most of the fight. And was the deserved winner at the end by obviously unanimous decision. And it did to sort of look like, I felt, Buatsi's sort of natural ability. We talked about it in the preview, with his sort of natural speed and athleticism that sort of won the fight in the end. He was just a bit more effective, landing the more cleaner punches and effective with the jab. I like the way he throws his sort of left and rights and always seems to score points, whereas Dan Aziz just wasn't quite able to, for me. And I think probably in the end, the points decision win for Buatsi was probably the best possible outcome. I'm professional as he is, he's got a man in there who is obviously trying to get to him. So I'm sure he was trying to land his power shots, but I just felt like, given how sort of good friends they are, those two outside the ring, in fairness, they're probably the points decision really the best outcome for all. Buatsi now moves on. In a weird way, I think Buatsi almost feels he's beyond that British and Commonwealth level, doesn't he? We've been talking about Buatsi for a long time as potentially challenging himself at World Honours, and he's not quite been there yet. And now the talk is obviously whether he can go in potentially with the winner of Bivol and Beterbiev. And the only concern would potentially Buatsi in terms of size. Does he carry the power to sort of hurt the likes of a Bivol or Beterbiev? I think he probably does. He's not the biggest light heavy by any means, but he does command the respect because he's so technically good, and he does have the ability, the way he lands his power shots. If you, for example, watch the stoppage he had against Dos Santos before he fought Bolotniks, that right hand, he throws that right hand right from his feet, right way through to the hips, and then brings that shot through, and he does carry that power. And I think that was sort of evident last night with Aziz. He sort of, you could see that Aziz, he had the respect of Aziz. He does carry that respect, and I think Aziz at times it didn't just quite seem like he wanted to try and get himself in range, which I was a bit surprised by at certain times last night. Whereas Aziz, I just look at Aziz with that sort of stature and frame, and I wonder if he could make 168. I think he'd be a mean super middle. Dan Aziz, is he big enough at light heavy? I'm not quite sure that he is, but there's still going to be massive domestic fights for Dan Aziz. I'd like to see him in with the likes of maybe a Cameron Smith or Lyndon Arthur. That'd be a fight that I'd be really interested in. And obviously Dan Aziz deserves a lot of credit for what he's achieved to this stage, and I'm sure he's still got more to achieve. Congratulations to Josh Buatsi. Seemed to be some issues with the ring, didn't there? There was a lot of slipping going on for Dan Aziz. He sort of swung off his feet a couple of times and hit the deck. And I know one of them was scored. I think possibly two of them were scored as knockdowns, just because Buatsi was sort of thrown and landing at the same time. But that's something that they'll need to look at, whether that was an issue with his footwear or the canvas just sort of taking on the moisture and becoming slippery. I'm not sure. We've seen it before, I think, in a fight that AJ had in the past. So obviously something that might need to be looked at, because you can't have a situation where boxers can't get their foot in. It's obviously paramount to have a steady base. But Aziz didn't mention it in the aftermath, but it's perhaps something that might need to be considered. Good to see a couple of fights being made. We heard that Fraser Clark and Fabio Wardley is now set for the O2 at the end of March, 31st of March, with, of course, Fabio Wardley putting his British and Commonwealth titles on the line. That was obviously a fight that we were supposed to see last year and didn't see it for one reason or the other. But I think that's a good fight and a good test for both those guys. Obviously, Fraser Clark, we know about his amateur background and pedigree. Fabio Wardley, by contrast, is sort of turned professional a lot earlier and has gone on to do real good things in the professional game. I thought he looked very good in his performance last out against Adeleye, and less so actually Fraser Clark in his last fight with Dave Allen. That was a bit of a stinker, wasn't it? So Fraser Clark will have to up his game on that performance if he's going to beat Fabio Wardley. And I'm sure he will. I'm sure the better opponent will bring out the best of him. He's a lump, and also I know, and we know what he's done at amateurs, so I'm sure that'll be a good fight. And those two, they're just on the sort of next tier, aren't they, from some of the top guys in the heavyweight division. Both of them trying to stake their claim to show that they can mix it beyond sort of British and European level. So that'll be a good test. I look forward to that one at the end of March. And of course, we saw Crispin Smith and Richard Riakporhe in the build-up to their fight, which is agreed we're hearing. Not sure on the date yet. Crispin Smith will put his title on the line in the rematch with Riakporhe before long. So a couple of big fights to come with Sky and Boxer. Obviously, Conor Benn was out in action last night as well over in Las Vegas, and he won a unanimous decision win against Peter Dobson, the American. It's a funny one with Ben, isn't it? Because he sort of talks about how he's going to blitz these people away and around and what he's going to do. And then when he goes to 10, 12 rounds, people sort of think, almost feels like he's this disappointment, really, compared to what he says. But he's not going to be able to blitz everyone out the ring. I just feel with Ben, I'm just not convinced he's a light middle or a middleweight. I think he looks to me like a 147, and I'd like to see them concentrate on that division. There's some big fights for him there at 147. I'd like to see him go up in the next level, the likes of David Evanesian, or even I like the Harlem Eubank fight for him. I know Eddie Hearn seems to think that there's no interest in that fight. I don't see why. They're both the same weight, and I'm with Senior on that one. I think that's a good fight. It just feels to me like with Ben that they've obviously sort of thought that the welterweight division is on lockdown with the likes of Crawford and Jaron Ennis. So that's why they're potentially talking about trying to mix him at different levels to get those money fights. But I like to see him focus on the welterweight division, and if he's going to proceed on his career, I think that's where I'm interested in seeing how far he can go. But there we are, that's just my opinion on that one. Just wanted to mention a couple of sad news stories this week, guys. Every now and then we get a stark reminder, don't we, of the dangers of this sport that we all love. And there was no sadder story than hearing of the passing of the young Japanese fighter Kazuki Aniguchi, who was involved in a fight on the Boxing Day Inoue card at bantamweight in his early 20s. He sadly lost his life having fallen ill after that contest. And I think it's just a reminder for us all of, in terms of the safety issues of boxing within the parameters of the sport, that all must be done to safeguard these boxers as much as they can, and probably more that could be done as well. So really sad news on the passing of Aniguchi. And of course, the sad news regarding Carl Weathers, of course, famously played Apollo Creed in the Rocky franchise. It was films that I used to watch as a kid, and I'm just sure many of us did. Rocky 3 was always a favourite of mine. I remember the scene of them two running on the beach, the training montage, and that scene at the end where they got in the ring and the ding ding before they sort of threw, and then the freeze frame, and that was a sort of film that I would watch time and time again. Really sad news regarding Carl Weathers, and it was sad news on sort of two different ends of the spectrum this week. That's it, guys. I'll see you on the next one.